What's going on, guys? This is Crozen, and finally, we got the sorcery builds out. So, if you guys don't know, I essentially had to go into New Game Plus for the last few days and basically grind and get all the scrolls and all the spells, just because Orbeck left my game and my original build character, and I couldn't make any sorcery builds at the time, or else this would have came out a long ass time ago. But we're finally here, and I finally got all the scrolls and spells, and I finally made a sorcery kind of character, and I call this one the Fire Witch Mage. We're essentially going to be using a lot of things that the Fire Witches use in this game. So as you see, we're using their weapon, which is the Immolation Tinder, and you can also cast spells with this, so it's really great to use in PvP. We're also going to be using their armor piece, at least their chest piece anyways, so we sort of look like them. And who said sorcery wasn't viable in PvP though? Honestly, this is my first time using sorcery, and I just found it to be an absolute wreck. As in, I wrecked a shitload of people. But it's just really easy to use, honestly. And I think the main thing that you have to focus on when you're using a caster build, whether it's pyro or sorcery, is you have to be unpredictable, and I think this build definitely achieves that unpredictableness, I guess you would call that. But you want to start out with the Knight class with this one. We're going to be leveling up pretty much every single stat except for Vitality. We're also not going to be leveling up Luck either, so then from there we can kind of go and I can show you all the stats that you're going to need and everything else about this character as far as the spells and everything else in general. Alright, so at soul level 120, we have 28 Vigor, we have 30 Attunement, 25 Endurance, 15 Vitality, 18 Strength and Dexterity. That's in order to use the Immolation Tinder. Also 56 Intelligence. I wanted to get that to 60, but unfortunately I didn't have any other points that I could lower for that. Also 12 Faith and 7 Luck. Now, what you can do, it's differently, is you can actually lower Vigor a little bit and raise up Endurance. Since I find it that endurance probably is the most important stat with this build. I mean, everything that you use wastes endurance and stamina, so you really want to kind of have that probably at least at 25. So I went with 25 with this one. And also for our weapons, we're going to be using the Immolation Tinder. We're also going to be using the Scholar's Candlestick. Now the Scholar's Candlestick increases your spell power by 25%, which is a huge increase. So you always want to have this in your left hand, and not using it, you don't even have to have the requirements. I know it requires like a dumb stat like Faith, but you don't even need Faith in order to get the 25% bonus. So as long as you have that either equipped, and even if you're two-handing this weapon, it still counts as being equipped. Also, we're going to be using the Avelyn, and lastly the Caestus. So as far as the Immolation Tinder, for those of you who don't know, you can cast spells with this, and it's actually a halberd, so it's pretty unique. But also another weapon that does this is the Heysel Pick, and I know you kind of get the Immolation Tinder a little late in this game. You got to kind of farm it from the Fire Witches in this area over here, but you can also use the Heysel Pick, which you can get earlier, and it will give you pretty much the same effect. You'll be able to have a weapon that you can actually attack with, and also you can cast spells with. However, I believe the Immolation Tinder is better once you are able to get this. Also, for our gear, we're essentially going to be using the Crown of Dusk. This also increases your spell power by about 10%. Also, the Fire Witch armor, like I said, I kind of wanted to go with a little bit of a Fire Witch feel. Also, the Painting Guardian gloves and the Court Sorcerer trousers. Now, you can kind of swap this out if you would like. I know we have a little bit of weight ratio to work with here. Also, for our rings, we're going to be using the Sage Ring. This way, we can get the fastest spellcasting time. Also, the Bellowing Dragoncrest ring, which increases your sorceries by 20%. Also, the Ring of Favor. And then lastly, the Young Dragon Ring, which increases your sorceries by 12%, and these do indeed stack. So I didn't go with the clutch rings. Now, for those of you who don't know, I know that there's been a lot of testing on those, and the clutch rings are apparently horrible in PvP, and you take a lot more damage when you are in PvP rather than PvE for it. Now, I wouldn't use these altogether, and in fact, I probably wouldn't use clutch rings anymore unless I was going for like a full glass cannon type of build. But this is basically all of my gear, and for my spells, I'm basically using the Homing Crystal Soul Mass, the Crystal Soul Spear, the Farron Flash Sword, the Soul Great Sword, and the Great Farron Dart, and this is kind of what I like to use in PvP. Now, if you are using PvE, or I should say, if you're in PvE and you're just facing bosses and stuff, I probably wouldn't use the Crystal Soul Spear, since it does require a lot more, I should say, a lot more mana in order to cast them. So I would probably just use the Great Heavy Soul Arrow instead, since it does require less mana to use, and it's going to give you pretty much nearly the same amount of damage. You're going to use you're going to suffer damage a little bit, but between as far as the mana cost, it's definitely lower, significantly lower, to the point where you're probably going to be able to get off more of these in a boss fight and you're not going to run out of mana. So I'd probably use the Great Heavy Soul Arrow for PvE, but for PvP I would switch that over to the Crystal Soul Spear, since that is going to do a hefty amount of damage. But that is really it, guys. Let me know if you like these sorcery builds, and if this video does well, then I will continue on and do more sorcery builds, since I know I could do a lot of them. I could do like a dex kind of hybrid, I could do a strength hybrid, I could do a lot of different sorcery builds if you guys want to see that, but I gotta know if this video does well. So I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.